Hi everybody, 4 Now, meteorologist Matt Gray here with another edition of the Brainstorm. We're going to finish up my little March Madness bracket of misunderstood or misused weather terms. So we got it down to a final four, and it wasn't even close. So let's take a look. By the way, you like our new look? I like it too. It's going to be fun. So here is the final four. You gotta have four. We're at Channel 4. You gotta have a final four. So we had Blizzard, Jetstream, Monsoon, and Dewpoint, and I kind of picked those, and I was curious to see what people had. Overwhelmingly, it was Dewpoint, and people were like, what in the world is that? So let's go through all of these one by one. We'll save Dewpoint for the end and have a little bit of fun here on this Thursday evening as I'm recording this. So let's start off with Monsoon. So Monsoon. A lot of people, when it rains really heavy, they're like, man, it was a monsoon out there. Great slang term, but it actually has a real meaning, a real technical weather meaning. And if you have lived in the southwestern United States, for example, if you've lived in Arizona, if you lived in New Mexico, if you've lived in Utah, Colorado also gets some of this as well, parts of California and Nevada, then you have a bit of a different understanding of what the word monsoon means, because that part of the country actually experiences what we call a monsoon. So it's a wind pattern. It's a seasonal wind pattern, so it only happens certain times of the year. It brings in moist ocean air over large, warm land areas. It's usually in the summertime. That's because, like in the Southwest, it heats up a lot more in the summertime, and that temperature difference, it's like a giant sea breeze, basically. That big temperature difference where it is consistently really warm in the Southwest U.S., for example. Well, that starts creating low pressure, and that starts bringing in winds off the Pacific, which brings moisture, and that's why they have their thunderstorm season kind of in that late spring through early fall. In other parts of the world, it's often called a rainy season, and there's all sorts of parts of the world kind of closer to the tropics, which would be basically anywhere kind of from our part of the southern United States, and then as you head further south towards the equator, and then on the opposite side of the globe as well. So basically, we're talking about a seasonal wind pattern that brings rain, and it usually accounts in many areas that receive monsoons. It accounts for the vast majority of the rain that they get every year. So these monsoon patterns are very useful, and when certain things happen, like certain phases of La Nina or El Nino, suppress those monsoons, that could be a big problem for some areas, and certainly the Southwest has seen that share of that. Now, let's go on to the next one here, Blizzard. This is also one where it seems like every time it is snowing bad outside, people are like, oh, it's a blizzard out there. Well, technical terms, once again, if you're from the upper Midwest or the Dakotas or parts of Montana, you probably have a different appreciation. In other parts of the Midwest as well, you probably have a different appreciation of a blizzard because they come more often to those parts of the world. High winds and reduced visibility from blowing or falling snow. There's an official definition here from the National Weather Service. Winds over 35 miles an hour. Visibility because of either blowing snow or falling snow. It doesn't have to be snowing. We see this in Montana and the Dakotas a lot, where it's so windy that it just kicks up all the snow that's on the ground, and you get what's called a ground blizzard. It's kind of like what we get in central Washington when we get blowing dust during windstorms. And so visibility under a quarter of a mile, so that would be very difficult to navigate in, for 3 hours or more. So it can't just be a little snow squall that's here and gone. It has got to be a legitimate storm for at least 3 hours. And those big time blizzards that come during the winter across the plains, they definitely qualify for that. And sometimes we get blizzard conditions in this part of the world as well, especially up in the high mountain areas, and you'll see a blizzard warning if that is the case, and that is the baddest of the bad when it comes to winter weather. Now let's go to our final two. Here's our runner-up, Jetstream, in our voting that we had on the Twitter poll. High winds concentrated in a narrow band or stream. That's what we call the jet stream. Little regions of high winds in the meteorology world, we call those a jet. And, well, they're up high, up where jet airplanes fly, and they're going pretty fast. So, yeah, it's a neat little term, a jet. And so all the little areas of all the little jets that circle our planet. Well, we call that the jet stream. And basically, most of the jet stream action occurs right around our part of the world, kind of right around the latitudes of the United States and then up into Canada. And so they separate the warm of the tropics from the cool of the polar regions, and they wave back and forth. And a lot of air concentrated in one spot, it has to spread out somewhere. That creates rising motion underneath those jet streams, and that can create stormy weather. So a lot of active weather and a lot of these storms that we talk about developing, it's usually because there's a wiggle or a wobble in the jet stream somewhere that is causing these problems. So the jet stream and its movement across our planet, that is really important in how the weather is developed. And that's why we talk about it on the program, or on TV, because the movement of the jet stream really does, especially when you look at weather, not from down here on the ground where everything's messy, but go up a few thousand feet where the weather patterns are much more predictable because there's no mountains, there's nothing to run into, basically. Jet stream and the movement of the jet stream is very, very important. So, yeah, jet stream. Basically, it's just high winds at a little spot, and they end up creating weather below it, usually, in one fashion or another. And that finally gets us to our big winner, the thing that you understood the least of all of these 16 weather terms, dew point. All right. I like dew point. Most people use humidity, right? We talk about relative humidity. Although humidity is 100%, it's awful out there. Well, I want to get you to shift your thinking a little bit. And I want people to think more in terms of dew point, because that really is a better number for determining whether or not it's muggy outside. So let's read this here. Temperatures, the dew point is the temperature the air has to be cooled off to in order to hit 100% humidity, i.e. clouds, frost, or fog. That ends up forming because essentially you've reached the carrying capacity of your atmosphere around your little weather station. And it's not going to hold any more moisture, so that moisture has to go somewhere. It's got to do something. And so it ends up condensing out into, like I said, clouds. This is also how you create fog, dew, obviously, on the ground, and fog as well. Particularly in fog forecasting around here, we're always looking for, hey, are we getting close to the dew point? That's going to be a sign that we're probably got to look for some spots that those weather stations where they are, that's where we might end up seeing a little bit of fog in a pretty short time. Here is the important thing, though, and not just that when the temperature equals the dew point, boom, we got fog, and it's 100% humidity. Here's the other thing. The higher the dew point is, the muggier our atmosphere is. This is really important, not just in severe weather forecasting, because if we, for example, here in the inland northwest, if we had dew points in the 50s on a summer day, the alarm bells start going off in my head. Thunderstorms, here we go. Let's keep an eye on some of the other weather factors. One of those ingredients, that's an important ingredient when we're talking about summertime thunderstorms, especially those that could become on the nastier side, is we have to have enough moisture in the air for those storms to get turned into big boys and big girls and really cause some problems here. Here's another thing. We talk about our climate is often pretty dry, right? Well, take a look at our dew points around the region today, or around the country today. San Francisco, we think of it as kind of a cold and damp. Well, San Francisco, the dew point right now, 48 degrees. That's certainly more muggy than the tropical and dry Los Angeles. That is certainly much more moisture than what we have in, say, Albuquerque, New Mexico right now, which has a dew point of 7 below, so it is cold and it is very, very dry. You probably couldn't get a snowflake out of that if you wanted to. You might, but they would be very, very small because there's just not a lot of moisture to work with. Here, our dew point is actually sitting above freezing as I record this, so that means it's going to be probably a more humid night by April standards, by early spring standards, and we are not going to get very cool as well. Your temperature can't go below the dew point, so this is a good indication as well of kind of what your potential is for clear skies for cooling off overnight, because you can't get below that dew point number. So yeah, another indication it's going to be a mild night. And then look down at Miami. I'm from Florida. Let me tell you, when the dew points start getting into the 70s, you are miserable. If you've ever been to Disney World and you step out that airport for the first time, oh my goodness, it is the worst feeling. And around the Gulf Coast, near those warm ocean waters, man, that dew point is super duper high, because it is warm ocean waters as opposed to the cold ocean waters off of our coast, off the Pacific coast. So we have a much drier climate as a result, and our dew points are a lot lower. But certainly, I'll take our humidity, and I'll take our dew points over the cold and damp of San Francisco, or the sweltering sauna of Miami. But dew point, it's a great way to kind of figure out where you're at as far as humidity goes. It's a great way to kind of a different way. It's made me think differently about meteorology and how I look at things as opposed to humidity, because guess what? In the morning, your relative humidity, it might be 100%, and in the afternoon, especially in the summertime, it might be like 5%. Now, that would also be an indication for fire weather. But thinking about things in terms of dew point, I think it's a good way to show how much moisture is in the atmosphere. Dew points for us in the 50s are like, whoa. Dew points that are sub-zero, those are really, really dry for us. And that's kind of the range that we get to around this part of the world. Maybe we get a 60s dew point every now and then, but we will never be as humid as what you see in places like Florida. So that's the dew point, and that is our little brainstorm bracket. And hopefully you enjoyed this. And we'll have more fun weather and science content for you here on 4 News Now on YouTube. And have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you again over the weekend.